This happened in late 2022, a few weeks after I left a toxic relationship that had consumed 3 years of my life. Emotionally drained, broke, and desperate for space, I ended up in Olympia, Washington. I didn't know anyone there. That was the point. I wanted to disappear for a while, hit reset somewhere cheap and quiet. I found a basement apartment on the edge of town, 6 units stacked 2 stories high behind a gas station and a shuttered strip mall. The place was dated but clean. My unit, the only one on the lower floor, had a narrow cement alley out back and a sliding glass door in the living room. It wasn't ideal, but it was affordable and empty, and I didn't ask for more than that. For the first 2 weeks, things were uneventful. I worked remotely during the day and stayed home most nights, grateful for the silence. No loud neighbors, no traffic, just me, the sound of my fridge, and the occasional creaks from old pipes. I kept the blinds drawn most of the time. There wasn't much to look at, just the alley. And beyond it, a crumbling storage building with boarded-up windows. Then, one night, everything changed. It was a Wednesday. I woke up suddenly in the early hours, just past 3 a.m. I lay there in the dark, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I heard it, a soft, deliberate tapping. Not loud, not frantic, just a light rhythm, like fingertips brushing glass. It was coming from the living room. I live alone. I got out of bed and moved slowly down the short hallway. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't want whoever was out there to see me. My heart was thudding in my chest as I approached the blinds covering the glass door. I paused, hesitating, then parted 2 of the vertical slats just enough to peek through. The alley was empty. Still, something didn't feel right. I turned on the porch light, hoping it might scare someone off. That's when I saw them, 2 wet handprints pressed against the outside of the glass. Perfect, clear, as if someone had stood there with their palms flat against the door only moments ago, but the ground outside was dry. There had been no rain. The air was cold. There was no logical reason for wet handprints. I called the police. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They checked the alley, circled the building, and asked if I'd seen anyone. I told them I hadn't, just the handprints. They said it was probably a prank, maybe a homeless person. Could even be a teenager trying to scare someone. I didn't buy it, but I nodded. After they left, I ordered a motion-activated security camera. It arrived the next day. I mounted it inside the living room, aimed squarely at the sliding glass door. For several nights, nothing happened. No more tapping, no handprints. I convinced myself it had been a one-time thing, some disturbed guy passing through. The camera footage showed nothing but the occasional raccoon or drifting shadow. Then, 5 days later, I reviewed the footage on a cold, quiet morning and found something that made my blood run cold. At 2:40 a.m., a man emerged from the shadows at the far end of the alley, slowly, deliberately. He was barefoot, wore a plain white t-shirt and dark pants. He didn't look homeless, he didn't look drunk, he didn't look right. He walked straight up to the glass door and just stood there. For 11 full minutes, he didn't move, didn't knock, didn't tap. Just stood still, facing the door, staring in. His eyes were wide but unfocused, vacant, like he wasn't really looking at anything at all. He didn't flinch, didn't fidget. He looked like a statue or someone in a trance. I watched the footage over and over again. I froze frames, zoomed in. His skin looked pale, even under the dim orange glow from the gas station light nearby. His hands hung limply at his sides. His head was tilted slightly, unnaturally, as if his neck had been turned and never quite righted. I sent the video to the police. They responded a few hours later, thanked me for the footage, added it to the report. But again, they told me unless he broke in or vandalized something, there wasn't much they could do. No crime had technically been committed. That night, I barely slept. I sat up with my laptop open, the camera feed streaming in one window while I tried to work in the other. I couldn't focus. I kept glancing over, half expecting him to appear again, and 2 nights later, he did. I hadn't gone to bed yet. It was just after 3 a.m. when I heard it, the same soft tapping coming from the glass. I grabbed my phone and opened the live feed. There he was, same clothes, same lifeless expression, standing maybe a foot from the door. Except this time he moved. He raised one hand slowly and waved. Not like someone saying hello. It wasn't friendly, it was stiff, robotic, like he was mimicking the idea of a wave without really understanding it. 3 short movements, then stillness again. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. I just sat there and watched. He stayed for 15 minutes. Then slowly he turned and walked back into the alley, swallowed by darkness. I moved out the next morning, packed everything I owned into the car, handed the keys to the manager, and paid the lease breaking fee without argument. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. When I mentioned the man outside my window, the landlord's expression didn't even change. He just said, "Yeah, you're not the first," and looked away. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. I drove away and never looked back. Since then, I've lived in a few different places, apartments, houses, even a friend's guest room. I always check the windows now. I never take basement units. I don't sleep without motion sensors. And I never leave blinds open at night. Sometimes I think about that man. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted. But something about him was wrong, not just eerie, wrong in a fundamental, unnatural way, like he wasn't entirely human, or maybe not human at all. What disturbs me most is the way he behaved. Not violent, not loud. He didn't try to get in. He didn't break anything. He just stood there, night after night, waiting, as if I were the one who was supposed to make the next move. And sometimes, late at night, I think I hear it again, just faintly, the soft sound of fingers on glass. I try to ignore it. I tell myself it's nothing, just my imagination working overtime, but I don't check the camera. I don't peek through the blinds, because part of me is scared he'll still be there, standing in the dark, waiting for me to wave back. It started like most of these jobs do. A message, a promise, and a location that didn't feel right the second I saw it. Back in 2019, I was doing odd work for a guy named Ramon. Not his real name, obviously, and I didn't ask for it. He operated in the kind of circles that made it clear questions weren't welcome. We weren't friends. I was just a guy with a van, a decent lockpicking kit, and the sort of moral compass that had long since stopped spinning. This particular job was supposed to be easy. Quick grab, he said. In and out. Blue house, end of a dead-end road just outside Tacoma. No one home, no alarms, no neighbors. He even gave me a key. I should have known that was weird. People like Ramon don't give out keys unless they want something very specific, and they don't waste them on small-time jobs. But I needed the money. Rent was overdue, and the part-time work I was doing at a junkyard barely covered food, so I took the job, didn't even ask what was in the house. He just said, top floor, back room, black duffel bag, that's it. It was nearly dusk when I pulled up to the place. He wasn't kidding. It was the only house on the road, surrounded by tall pines that looked like they hadn't been trimmed in decades. The road leading in was gravel, overgrown at the edges, no mailbox, no streetlights, and the house itself. It was this faded powder blue two-story with chipped paint and windows that looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. It didn't look abandoned exactly, but it didn't look lived in either. The grass was overgrown, the porch sagging a little. One of the shutters was hanging crooked. It was the kind of house that felt forgotten. I sat in the van for a good 5 minutes, just watching. No lights, no movement, no sounds, except for the wind through the trees and the occasional creak of the structure settling. Eventually, I convinced myself it was fine. I walked up the path, key in hand, and let myself in. The inside smelled like old wood and damp carpet. I flicked on a flashlight, no power, of course, and took a look around. The place was eerily intact, not clean but untouched. Dust everywhere, but no signs of squatters, no graffiti, no mess. Just silence. The layout was simple. Living room and kitchen downstairs, a narrow staircase leading up. I didn't waste time exploring. Ramon said the duffel was upstairs, back room, so that's where I went. The stairs creaked under my weight, but nothing else stirred. At the top, there were 3 doors, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The back room was on the left. I opened the door. There it was, the duffel bag sitting on the floor next to a window. Black canvas zipped shut. I knelt down, put a hand on it. That's when I noticed the bed. It was made perfectly, like a hotel bed. Crisp corners, smooth sheets. That alone wouldn't have meant much, except the rest of the house was blanketed in dust and decay. But not this room. No dust, no smell of mildew. It even felt warmer. That gave me pause. I stared at the bed, then the window. It was closed, but the curtain was pulled slightly to one side as if someone had been looking out recently. Still, I wasn't paid to think. I grabbed the bag, stood up, and turned to leave. That's when I heard the noise, a floorboard somewhere downstairs. Not the wind, not the house shifting, a distinct footstep. Someone was inside. I froze, listened. Another creak, then another. Slow, measured. My first thought was cops, even though I'd seen no signs of surveillance. Then maybe Ramon had lied, and someone was living here after all. Squatter, owner, whatever. I needed to move, fast. I crept out of the room, staying low. My flashlight was off now, relying on what little ambient light still came through the windows. I reached the top of the stairs and stopped cold. There was someone standing at the bottom. I could only see a silhouette. No features, just a tall figure, motionless in the dark, not moving, not saying a word. I backed up, slowly. I didn't make a sound. The figure didn't follow. I slipped back into the bedroom and closed the door gently. My heart was pounding, sweat already cold on my neck. I looked around. No lock on the door. No furniture to block it with either. Then I remembered the window. I rushed over, pulled the curtain aside, and looked out. The drop wasn't too bad. Maybe 8 feet to the ground. Overgrown bushes underneath would cushion the fall. I pried the window open, stiff but not sealed, and swung a leg over. That's when I heard the whisper, right behind me. "Don't!" I whipped around, heart in my throat. No one there. But the bedroom door was now open, wide open, and I hadn't heard it open. I didn't wait. I launched myself out the window, duffel bag in hand, hit the bushes hard, rolled and ran for the van without looking back. I drove for 20 minutes before I even glanced at the rearview mirror. No one behind me, no lights, just darkness. Back in town, I parked under a streetlight and finally opened the bag. Inside were 3 things: a small metal box, a folded piece of cloth, and an old photograph. The photo stopped me cold. It was of the house, the blue house, but taken decades ago. Black and white, maybe the 1950s. In the foreground was a family, mother, father, 2 kids, all standing on the porch, all smiling. Except someone had drawn over the father's face, scribbled it out completely. Jagged black lines, deep, angry scratches. I picked up the metal box. It was locked with no obvious keyhole, felt heavy. The cloth was wrapped around something. I unfolded it carefully. A razor, straight edge, rusted but clearly old. There were brown stains on the cloth. I didn't need a lab to know what they were. I took the item straight to Ramon the next morning, didn't ask questions, didn't want answers. He nodded, paid me, and told me never to talk about that job again. I didn't. But sometimes, not often, but enough to notice, I dream of that bedroom, of standing at the window, looking out, and someone looking back at me from the glass, but it's not my reflection. It was the first home I'd ever owned. After years of apartment hopping and hand-me-down rentals, I'd finally signed the dotted line on a modest 3-bedroom house in rural Oregon. It was a fixer-upper, peeling paint, creaky floors, and a yard that looked like it hadn't been mowed in 5 years, but it was mine. No landlords, no neighbors stomping overhead. Just me, a fresh start, and an endless list of repairs. The house came cheap for the area, The realtor had explained it away as bad location, too remote, but I didn't mind the solitude. I wanted it, actually. I'd just gotten out of a chaotic job in Seattle and needed to be somewhere quiet, somewhere peaceful. The house sat on the edge of a dense forest, its backyard fading into tall fir trees and blackberry brambles. No fences, no sidewalks, just a gravel driveway that twisted up from the highway like a snake. The nearest neighbor was nearly half a mile away. I didn't even meet them until my third week living there. I spent most of that first month unpacking, painting, and learning how to do things I'd never needed to know before, like fixing leaky faucets and relighting a water heater. Every day felt like work, but the kind of work that gives you a sense of ownership, a stake in the ground. Then I found the crawl space. It was behind the laundry room, an awkward little door, about 3 feet high, half hidden by a washer I'd pushed aside to paint the baseboards. The door itself was made of warped plywood and had no knob, just a finger hole. I assumed it led to piping access or a shallow foundation trench, but curiosity got the better of me. I tugged it open. Inside was darkness, deep, stale, absolute. The smell hit me first, damp soil, mildew, and something else, sharp, like rusted iron or old blood. I clicked on my flashlight and aimed it inside. It was deeper than I expected. About 4 feet tall and 10 feet wide, running the length of the laundry room. The walls were unfinished concrete, but the floor was packed dirt. Some old insulation hung in tatters from the ceiling beams, and in the far corner, half buried in the dirt, was what looked like an old wooden chest. I hesitated, the kind of hesitation that feels almost instinctual, like your bones know something before your brain does. But I crawled in anyway. The ceiling brushed my back as I moved, the air thick and unmoving. I reached the chest and cleared the dirt away with my hands. It wasn't locked, just latched. Inside were dozens of objects, all carefully wrapped in cloth. Old baby shoes, a pocket watch, Polaroids so faded the faces looked like smudges. There was a woman's hairbrush with hair still tangled in it, and a child-stuffed rabbit missing an eye. All of it had the feel of something forgotten on purpose, like a time capsule nobody ever meant to find again. I brought the box out, but after 30 minutes of inspecting everything under better light, I couldn't make sense of it. There were no names, no dates, just fragments. I left it in the garage and decided to seal the crawl space again the next morning. That night I heard something moving under the floor. It started as a faint scraping, like fingers dragging across the underside of the wooden boards. Then it turned into a soft thump, once, then again. I froze in bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound was directly beneath me, beneath my room. I told myself it was probably an animal, raccoons or possums maybe. The woods were full of them. I fell asleep with the light on. The next day, I checked the perimeter of the house. There was no visible access to the crawl space from outside, just the door in the laundry room. No broken vents, no signs of animals. I even tossed flour across the crawl space floor to see if anything would leave prints. That night, the sounds came back, louder, closer. The thumping was more rhythmic now, more intentional, like a fist pressing against the boards from below again and again. My dog, Max, a German Shepherd I'd adopted 6 years ago, started barking at the floor, snarling actually. Hackles raised, body stiff. He wouldn't sleep in my room after that. I set up a camera in the laundry room aimed at the crawl space door. I didn't expect to catch anything, but I had to know. The next morning I reviewed the footage. Around 2:17 a.m., the door moved. It didn't open, but it shuddered, once, then twice, like something was pushing against it from the other side. I called a pest control service, thinking maybe some larger animal had burrowed underneath the house. They sent a guy out 2 days later. He was an older man named Victor, gruff but polite. He inspected the crawl space while I stood in the laundry room, arms crossed, trying not to look nervous. After about 10 minutes, he crawled out pale-faced and shaking dirt from his coveralls. "There's nothing alive down there," he said, wiping his hands. I blinked. "What do you mean?" He glanced at the small door, then back at me. I mean, it's not raccoons, or possums, or rats. I've seen infestations before. This isn't one of those. He didn't charge me, just packed up and left without another word. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again, but this time it wasn't just thumping, it was whispering. Indistinct at first, just murmurs that sounded like wind, but as I sat there in bed, holding my breath, I heard my name, whispered slowly, from under the floorboards, clear as day. "David!" I snapped. I tore open the crawlspace door, flashlight in one hand and a crowbar in the other. I crawled in, heart pounding, mouth dry. I shined the beam across the dirt. The flour I had sprinkled days before was still there, undisturbed. No prints, no dragging, nothing. But the chest was gone. I swear to you, it was gone. I searched the crawlspace from end to end. Even ran outside to check the walls for hidden entrances. Nothing. I even dug where it had been buried, convinced I'd hallucinated the entire thing. The next day, I put the house up for sale. Didn't matter that I'd only owned it for 6 weeks. Didn't matter that I'd poured most of my savings into it. I couldn't stay. Not after what I'd heard. Not after the chest disappeared. My last night in the house, I slept in the living room with Max by my side. I didn't even go back into the bedroom. I kept the lights on and the crawlspace door nailed shut. At 3:13 a.m., every light in the house went out. Max started growling, and from behind the laundry room wall, I heard a voice say, "Found you." I left before sunrise. I didn't even wait to pack most of my things. I just got in the truck with Max and drove until I ran out of gas. I signed over the house to the bank 2 weeks later and moved in with my sister across the state. Sometimes late at night, I still hear the whispering, not under the floor anymore, just behind doors, in vents, in the walls, always the same word.